improvements, how can Kampala be giving us 16 billion? What about other district and co? Hence, there is reason for us to look at entrepreneurship at the tool for economic sustainability, especially in the 21st century. So there have been many challenges so far. But one of those challenges that we're actually seeing is there are just three. And I'm going to be fast now. One is structural change. Two is economic growth. And the third one is poverty trap. Over time, we know very well that what has been in place has been industry, but the industry has not really focused on the new setting and the new deal. And what is the new deal? And this was the new deals that countries like Singapore did many years ago. Bangladesh did many years ago. 1960, Bangladesh had a GDP of $4 billion. And by 2005, Bangladesh moved to about $62 billion. And as now, Bangladesh has not less than $416 billion at their GDP. What are they doing? Entrepreneurship. But this is what actually happened with structural change. As structural change is talking about systemic failures. I'm very much aware that one of us understand when we talk about systemic failures in Uganda. Or in Uganda, not just in Uganda, even in Africa. You can imagine a continent that has about 1.34 population and $2.7 trillion GDP. And yet, structural change or structural failures has become one of our issues. We're talking about structural change, we're talking about the systemic failures. Many years ago, Singapore had the same issue that Uganda had. And what was the issue they had? Singapore is actually located in the southeastern part of Asia. And being one of the small countries in Asia, they had issues of mineral resources. In Uganda, we have mineral resources, so you can imagine. So they were actually suffering from structural failures. Or structural failures, especially structural change. We saw the intervention of Lee Kuan Yew. What did Lee Kuan Yew, what did he do to change the dynamics of Singapore? That had a per capita income of about $400, and in 2 years rose up to about $50,000. What did he do? Three things. But the major thing he did was to create what we call national competition. In Uganda, we have to create what we call national competition. And in national competition, there are three things that it entails. The first thing is entrepreneurship. The second thing is innovation. The third thing is teamwork. When we're talking about teamwork, I'm going to show it to you what teamwork really means. What does innovation does? Innovation allows you to bring new ideas and new products to the new market. Entrepreneurship. You set up new business and create new things to it, newness. Paul White said something. Paul White said, you cannot begin to do things the way it's done before. It means that having an old wine in an old white skin is not sustainable. What is sustainable for us is having a new white skin and having a new wine in a new white skin. And that's the point that we must take up today when it comes to structural change. We must take up the approach that Lee Kuan Yew actually did. Innovativeness, entrepreneurship, and teamwork. Then what about the second one? Economic growth. I'm going to learn a word from one of my lecturer, Professor Ido. I learned economics from managers from him. And it clearly says that average production is equal to average income. What does that mean? A country that is not producing, your average income will go down. If you produce, your average income will to go up. And that is why in Uganda, the president is driving Grow Uganda, Build Uganda. We must talk about what can we produce in Uganda. Uganda is blessed with resources. There are three sectors doing well in Uganda right now. The first one is the agricultural sector. Agriculture sector is actually one of the major landmarks in Uganda. Service sectors. These are one of the sectors that you cannot do without. I don't see very much that there are trades. Go to the town over there. There are many trades there, but the question is who are those pioneers of these trades? I need the answers to you. So, we must ensure that we drive production at every level. The last one, which is poverty trap. Denmark has given us the idea that you can do away with poverty. Many years ago, Denmark was at par compared to the population of Uganda. It means Denmark wasn't doing very fine at all. So, the idea of Denmark coming out of poverty and becoming one of the nations that all of practice and live well in peace and harmony, and even in business. Give all the benefits. That poverty is something we can actually do without in Africa. But I've been able to give out some recommendations to these three challenges. The first one I spoke about was failure lead strategy. What does failure lead strategy do? Let me take you back to memory lane. In UK, for the first time ever, UK inflation rose up from 2% to over 10% during the wash of these schools. But what happened? We all know what happened. You get what the intervention and the deduction of Rishi Sunak. The question is, why Rishi Sunak? Nobody looked at where he came out from. What everybody was so much concerned about is what he can do, the solution. So, we must ensure that the people driving entrepreneurship in Uganda are technocrats, people that knows this particular business. Not just talking about it, but walking the talk. You must become a creator of business. How do I tell you that business can do fine in Uganda if I'm not a business owner? How can I partner through business? How can I tell you what we can do in business or entrepreneurship if I'm not one? And this was actually one of the reasons why Rishi Sunak came. Pharaoh strategy came out from the challenges that happened during Pharaoh time. We know Egyptians or Egypt time, they had issues, brought in Joseph. Why Joseph? Because Joseph was the one that can solve the solution or the problem of Pharaoh at that time. Hence, Joseph became the prime minister. So we must ensure that Pharaoh lead strategy is one of the approach that we must ensure and use well. I spoke more in the paper. The second one, the second one, strengthening coordination at all levels. We must ensure that Ugandan government with the universities, and this is one of the reasons why I so much love this business symposium. Now, the solution to every problems in every nation is in the book, because researchers from institutions have written about it. It's just that our government are so lazy to open up those books. You can imagine the outcome of this particular meeting right now, documented, and the government is actually looking at it. So we have many fantastic ideas that many people researchers have spoken about, but yet the government refuses to actually dust the shelves and look at the solutions. And these are the solutions that we're actually bringing. So the government must ensure that there's coordination from every level. Then the second one is public-private partnership. Economically, the government does not invest. What the government does is this is, the government gives you an enabling environment for investors to come in and what? And set up in place. So, the government must ensure that there is public-private partnership, it's called PPP. In Uganda, for example, imagine Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is one of the largest lakes in Africa. Imagine what you can get from tourism from that particular area. Kenya is doing well in tourism. Then what happened to Uganda? How actually arrested that particular situation, that particular place? Many months ago, I was at Divine Resort Spa, and I checked out. I had to use the boat from Yo-Yo Speak Resort, to Resort Spa, and I saw what is there. It is beautiful. Imagine if government brings in and involve the private people. We'll do it. Then the third one, enhance alignment of entrepreneurship policy with COVID-19 resurgence priority on 2030 agenda. Now we are done with 2020. Now we're talking about 2030 agenda. What 2020, 2019, 2020 taught us is that if care is not taken, you'll be kicked out of business. And when you're being kicked out of business, the government productivity will reduce. It means performances and productivity will not do well. If there is a resurgency again, you can imagine. So what must we do? We must ensure that every policy that comes out from the government, likewise from the erudite scholars, institutional researchers, and co, are policies that are withhold pressures, withhold COVID-19, even Ebola. Now we're talking about Ebola. I have one more minute, please. Okay. Resources should be allocated to identify and scale up this. Now, what we're talking here is the government must ensure that they fund. There is difference between funding and investment. Which I made a mistake. Not getting funding, it's investing. If you fund a project, you will not get return. If you invest in the project, you get returns. So the government must invest in schools like Cavendish. And when we say sausage business at Cavendish, talk about things like this. The government will, lastly, the present method of teaching entrepreneurship as subject shouldn't be taught and should actually, like teaching, but like an activity. Entrepreneurship is not a destination, it's a journey. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, entrepreneurship is not a what? Destination. It is a journey. Let us have a discussion from Dr. Oltayo's son. You're welcome, Dr. Oltayo.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, or good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to be here, and as always, every time I'm in the presence of the VC, I tend to keep quiet because I learn a lot from listening to him. So this is a rare exception where I'm going to do some talking. Thank you very much, Mr. Akiwande Shegun Matthew, for the excellent presentation. Entrepreneurship as a tool for economic sustainability in the 21st century in Uganda. The 21st century, some will argue, is perhaps the greatest century in human civilization because it is characterized by amazing medical achievements, it is characterized by technology, artificial intelligence, space tourism, but also we have epidemics, pandemics, and we're riddled with a lot of these challenges. And the question is raised, in all these achievements and challenges, where does Africa fall? Where does Uganda fall? And so, as Mr. Akiwande has perfectly well articulated, entrepreneurship is indeed a tool that can be used as a means for sustainable development. But sustainable development, if we look at it by definition, we know that it is a type of development economically that does not negatively impact society, culture, and of course, other aspects of the community. And this begs a question when we talk about entrepreneurship, the ability to be entrepreneurial. We have to look at what exactly does entrepreneurship mean to us as Africans, as Ugandans. Of course, we have the great minds. The Western world is riddled with entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, and all these names. And we want to find out, is it the same thing to be an entrepreneur as being a business owner? If the government empowers me, I start a shop on Wall Street, I import shoes from Dubai, like my neighbor, is that entrepreneurship? And so one of the challenges we need to look at as people is simply not to get excited about entrepreneurship. It is indeed an engine, it is indeed a tool. In the hands of a craftsman, it will do exceptional things. But we need to understand that entrepreneurship, in its purest form, calls for creativity. And creativity, of course, is the crucible for innovation on which entrepreneurship is built. And so we have to ask our questions. In our institutions, even in our homes and families, are we encouraged to be creative so that we can actually be able to be entrepreneurial within the context in which we are in Uganda? And so, as Mr. Akiwande emphasizes, in a lot of these countries, Denmark, Singapore, China, entrepreneurship has been hailed as the key factor that influences sustainable economic development. But as Mr. Akiwande emphasized, there are the three main things emphasized: structural change, economic growth, and the poverty trap. My emphasis here is the caution in that when it comes to structural change, it calls for innovation. When it comes to economic growth, it calls for innovation. And as I said earlier, the emphasis on innovation is birthed in creativity. Are we creative? Is our culture, is our families, our educational system encouraging creativity? Or we are just supposed to copy and paste from the success of the Western world and simply plaster on our country, on our continent? So, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I want to emphasize, again with caution, as we celebrate China, Singapore, we have to understand that there were certain prices that were paid, draconian measures were taken. I remember a book I wrote last year, and I researched on Lee, and I was surprised that there was a social development unit in Singapore whereby who you marry is decided for you. Yes. And so, even for economies to be sustained, sometimes the hard things have to be done. And the question is, are we ready to pay that price? Are we ready to do what it takes to actually become a more sustainable economy? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Oltayo, for that brief. discussion. As a matter of time, I would like to welcome the next presenter. That is Mr. Mapwepwe Julius. He's going to present a paper on economic and social upgrading trade policies, FDI value chains and innovation networks. Put your hands together for Mr. Mapwepwe Julius. Welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Fine, thank you. I will make one request as we begin. I know we are standing between you and lunchtime. You forgive me for that. You blame it on Rio. There are usually three things in Uganda to blame some of these things for. One, you blame it on opposition. Another one, you blame it on Rio. Another one, you blame it on COVID. And you are finished. So you will not blame me, but rather the... So I'll make this one request that we all kind of stand up. Stand up. I'm told I have to remain here because they are people on the... Yeah, so I have a little camera. Otherwise I would have said, please repeat after me or do after me, but now I have a little camera. So I'll just say, please just take around, where's your left? I think left needs to be this one for my case. So just round. Slowly, don't knock your neighbor. Slowly, don't knock your neighbor. That was left, so we do the same, right? Slowly, don't knock your neighbor. Guys, I have a lot of problems to settle. Thank you. Please take your seats. Part of that is to, I've seen some people agreeing with the presenter even when the presentation hasn't been done. So thank you very much for agreeing with me in advance. My name again is Julius Mapwepwe. I think I am a man for all seasons perhaps, as each of the testify later on, maybe. But I'm here in the capacity of not being a member of the Uganda Debt Network only, but also being a coordinator for the East African Budget Network. That already tells us that a bit of 1, 2, 3 points that I touch on may perhaps go beyond the Ugandan border. The third one, and maybe last for now, I say it's many, I would have said I'm a sorrow because I am, and those who know. But the third one is that I work with, as a technical advisor for the parish development model. So I think we shall have some additional discussions, both from the theoretical and practical point of view. I know we'll agree to disagree, or agree. You first agree to disagree, and or agree to agree on some things as a matter of fact, and others we don't as a matter of fact. And we all live in this. Quickly, economic and social upgrading trade policies. That's the whole thesis, PhD thesis. FDI, foreign direct investment. That's the whole thesis. 2 theses actually. Value chains. That's the whole thesis, as you saw the presentation earlier on. Innovations. That's the whole thesis. Networks itself is the whole thesis. So you can see how the organizers were real and fair to me, but I'll complain later on. Quickly, I want to say that all protocol observed. Vice Chancellor will take recognition of you and all distinguished ladies and gentlemen here. I was not allowed, I have to make a PowerPoint presentation, but that gives me a lot of legroom to be, and so I take advantage of that. But I want to officially offer a record to thank Nkumba University, thank Cavendish for this kind of initiative. Let's please clap for them. I have argued in my paper that is what universities, what the biblical sort should be doing. And maybe we could look at doing this on a monthly basis. That's just 12 times a year. And then each of these topics that we bundled together in the case of my point would be handled, you know, one, and we dissect it in detail and sanctity that really would befit an intellectual discussion and an intellectual browse kind of audience. But I've also said in my topic that I lay no, and this I read verbatim, that I lay no full claim to original research, even though I exercise my free thought or analysis and interpretation aspects and thesis thereof highlighted in this paper. In other words, I've looked at some of the ideas that perhaps are. The Bible says there is nothing new under the sun. So I cannot have had anything new. What may vary nonetheless may be the degree, the perspective of interpretation. And that's where I'm coming from. The other bit then quickly is to say that I've also looked at this topic from the broader perspective of looking at Uganda I'm transiting to 2.0, so we kind of explore there. I have looked at this from the perspective of Uganda as a land bridge, as opposed to land looked as we used to be taught in primary school and maybe some universities that are not the caliber of Nkumba and Cavendish, but also not caliber of Uganda Matters University, are perhaps still teaching that Uganda is a landlocked country. I have taken the perspective of Uganda being a landlocked country. In 2.1, which is there quickly, I've said that Uganda is a land of 3 P's. That is peace, and we can have an intellectual interrogation of that. We say true or false. A land of a pleasant, beautiful land. The earlier presentation has bailed me out, I don't have to. But a land also profitability, as we look at some of these subtopic elements that have been given to us. In terms of peace, I have said that the regional perspective, you can't discuss peace, you can't discuss trade policies, you can't discuss investment, you can't discuss trade without looking at the regional spectrum. And I've said that the goings on in Ethiopia necessarily matter to us. It matters whether we can have a trade opportunity and a trade dividend subsequently or not. The goings on in Burundi matter to us. Whether we can have, then we can interrogate on strategies to partake advantage of the opportunities that they are making beyond our geographical jurisdiction as a country. But I've also said that those opportunities can be explored from transportation mechanisms. When you look at the regional perspective, for instance, and if you look at the Northern Corridor as an example, investment, where His Excellency, their excellencies, the presidents have said, let's have an interconnectivity from Port of Lamu at Indian Ocean, but link that not only with Mahaj here off Lake Ushuru on the other side, some of you call it Lake Albert or Mitansje, and link it with the Atlantic in terms of a trade route that can only be anchored on peace and some of these opportunities. But I want to go to, I don't have all the time, so I'll quickly go to 2.5. Please go to 2.5. 2.5. I have really jumped a number of things, but I want to say that to take advantage of some of these opportunities and subtopics that I have highlighted, trade policies and regimes and investment in the post-COVID era, we must look at strategic joint 2.5, I called it, strategic joint public FDI actions for competitiveness. Many countries in the region and even beyond are facing fiscal challenges, revenue challenges, budget challenges. We can't simply sit down. We must see how we invest in certain areas that can offer us bigger market. Part of that is going to take strategic investment and challenging the narrative the hitherto narrative that the state must be out of business. The state should be out of business. It is only the private sector that should. In this part of the world, and I have had an opportunity to be in a number of countries across the world, you will agree with me, or you may, that the health being, the mindset and astuteness of the private sector here in low-income countries that include Uganda cannot have muscle enough, cannot marshal enough finances that you require to do certain investments. You cannot have somebody here say a local investor to invest in Uganda areas, or rather what remains of it. Not at all. You need huge sums of money. So the state necessarily must come in as we talk about attracting those experts from Asia and wherever. We are also putting in some money on the expertise. And I've given 2-3 examples for since we don't have all the time. Look at iron ore as an example in 2.6. Iron ore as an example. When you look at how much the region imports, worth of billions of dollars, you'll be amazed. But that our own Muko here in Chiche's area, Cavendish, road to be precise and concise, as well as iron ore deposits that we have in the Kore region, or some region of the country, we should be able to invest in that, assisted also by the state muscle, to be able to partake advantage that comes in the steel market. The imports that we are seeing taking away our little money, China and after China, we think that Uganda, if invested in such an area, will be able to improve our legroom on fiscal revenues, will be able to improve a lot of our trading policies and opportunities, because up to Chad, there have been feasibility studies that show that we can supply and dominate all of those markets. Not many people across the world have got that kind of nice, refinable iron ore into steel and steel products. That's an area we can. And that's just the thesis that Nkumba University and Cavendish will be able to do more, and we get additional backup to make the case for our own investment as we talk about foreign direct and royalties. The other one quickly I have looked at is the phosphate fertilizer manufacturing opportunities in Osukuru Hills, Tororo area, and also by extension Kaleja area. We think that with the disruptions that we have seen globally, for instance, where a lot of fertilizer supply in the world comes from the Russians, comes from the Ukrainians, comes from Eastern Europe, and the confusion that they have chosen to be in. There are these opportunities we can partake as a country, but the state must bring in its own bit of the money as we look at foreign direct investment contributors. In any case, some of these areas are so strategic that we don't want to simply leave them for the market to exercise its speed as and when it wants. I will quickly go to 2.11, 2.11. I'm jumping so many things, we don't have lecture of time. But also in the same spirit, I will say that it is high time that Africans, you and I, and those who are sympathetic to Africa, graduate from the so-called Washington Consensus of 1987, which said there shall be for the low-income countries, there shall be for sub-Saharan, there shall be for some countries, for Latin America as well. The full liberalization of the economy, that's when things function better. Some of us have said, hold on, those can function better in certain types of economies, not in ours, which are still nascent in carbon. Therefore, government will still need to graduate certain elements and define the famous Washington Consensus of 1987, which said there shall be full liberalization. You cannot have a full liberalization of the economy and you are talking about social resilience. There is a contradiction, there is a paradox. The capitalist does not care if the cow has eaten or not. He or she is interested in milk and That's all. So the state must come in some of these areas, and I've just given some few, 3-4 examples as we talk about trade, as we talk about investment, as we talk about foreign direct investment. Standard gauge railway. The 1 meter gauge railway, now in the name of Uganda Railways. Energy, nuclear investment, the school fertilizers that I've just highlighted on. Uganda Airlines, if you have to have your products quickly in 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours to buy where the market is, you are not going to rely on somebody in the private sector somewhere. You also need to come in and give a direction. And one of the strategies, you could take it on twofold. One would be to fully invest, kickstart that opportunity. When it has come to maturity, after a certain period of years, you can divest yourself out as Mr. or Madam Government by floating shares to indigenous, mark my word, indigenous companies and indigenous individuals. We also don't want to have an economy which is an exercise or an opportunity just for the foreigners. So that's where I'm also coming from. So you can talk about foreign direct investment, but it shouldn't just be left alone to go and play with the market as and when it works. It must be guided. There is an aspect on 2.12, as we talk about trade and all this, agro-industrialization to use the stock of public infrastructure and trade. The many trade agreements that we've done as a country, I'll give an example. The Everything But Arms, which is the government of Uganda, I'm being warned 5 minutes ago, thank you. Government of Uganda and United Kingdom and Europe generally. Everything except arms. How much of that opportunity have we taken? Because of some of the supply constraints that we've seen earlier on presented. We think that now with an investment, for instance, in a Uganda Airlines, to the extent of having a cargo section of the Uganda Airlines and coming back home and organizing production and productivity, which also I think we'll touch on in the afternoon. I'll give a practical example later on. We would be able to partake of those opportunities, trade opportunities that have been signed upon, but also potentially that do exist, as well as agriculture. We've said that you can have an opportunity, for instance, in food production, that is in 2.14, as an example. Food production, Uganda leveraging food production and productivity. I'll just give a quick example. When you look at East African community, 80% of the community's arable land is in Uganda. And we can argue about that. The rest is semi-desert, I don't know this one, Serengeti National Park, the other one, those types of stories. 40 million, alas, 40 million arable land, hectares, which is in Uganda, only 17 is under use, under cultivation, under manufacturing, for case of manufacturing points, only 17. But that 17 also includes those who produce half a cup of something, who produce a quarter of a spoon of milk and grain half cups. So there is a lot of opportunity we can organize if we invested in that area in terms of agro-processing and marketing, that value addition component. And universities, I think you need to invest a lot more in this discussion, because it is where we can find a lot of opportunities for both comparative and competitive advantage actually in having the graduates that we have, being able to have certain opportunities out there, and also taking advantage of the trade opportunities that we already have in the region. I've got the last one as I wind up, and I'll just touch on one point. And I'll say that there are opportunities, for instance, in the pharmaceutical industry, in the case of Uganda. Yes, you have 51 pharmaceutical manufacturing companies now, but that's not enough. Where are the raw materials coming from? Our trade regimes with India, our trade regimes with some of these opportunities. You can manufacture here and conquer the Central African market and the Great Lakes region market. The trade and investment opportunities and agreements have been signed, they're in place, we can use them. Uganda is importing equivalent of $351 million annually in terms of pharmaceutical imports. But many of these things we can, two things, do use our own inputs here, and we can make an argument later on. We don't have all the time. I know the moderator is looking at me. But the other one is that we can encourage those who want to produce to come, bring in their money, their capital, their technologies, their innovation here, and then they are able to use our electricity, use our trucks to deliver, and many of these advantages that we have put in place. So I have said I've concluded, or I'll conclude with 4.1, which says that a lot has been done, yes, contrary perhaps to some thinking here. In infrastructure, for instance, I seem to see a lot done. In human capital development, I seem to see a lot done. That now a Cavendish can produce an accountant, and me as an investor, I no longer have to run and come with an imported accountant. A lot has been done in human capital development and many other areas. But also as we talk about foreign direct investment, let us not forget domestic direct investment. The last example I end with is the case of the late UCD was what now is now Stanbic. Stanbic floated shares, but there was oversubscription, both by our own indigenous companies and individuals, as well as foreigners, because the economy is still rising. And then they funded some of us. So where did that money go? So it tells you that domestic direct investment can have an opportunity. The samples that we have as students, as lecturers, as traders, can be converted into production opportunities to take advantage of the trade policies that we already have in the area and the consumer market, for instance, we have in the region to be able to advance ourselves and as an economy. I want to thank you very much and stop here for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kapwepe. Another round of applause for him. Mr. Kapwepe, please forgive me for rushing you. I wish I would give you the whole day. And also, forgive me for not actually profiling you when you were beginning. Mr. Kapwepe is neither a member of Cavendish University nor a member of Nkumba University. He's one of the practitioners. I can say a very big bridge between theory and practice for us. So I'm going to call upon Dr. Faith to come and give a profile so that we get to know him better. You're welcome, Dr. Faith.
Thank you so much, Viola. Thank you so much, Mr. Kapwepe. I hope I have the time to do it, but I hope I can do it. So Mr. Kapwepe is a Pan-African. I hope you can confirm that from how he was presenting. His experience in international development policy and financing spans for 15 years, and he's equally very educated. He holds a master's in development studies, a bachelor's majoring in economics, postgraduates in project planning, development finance, management, and he's a fellow at one of the International Visitors Leaders Program in the United States of America. He's currently the coordinator of the East African Budget Network. He is equally a scholar, and we have confirmed that. And he is also the technical advisor to the government of Uganda on the parish development model that we have just been brought to book about. And last but not least, Mr. Kapwepe is one of our panelists this afternoon. So would you like to hear him speak more? Are you interested in hearing him speak more? So stick by this afternoon. There's more that awaits. Thank you, Julius, for allowing to come. I met Julius 2 weeks ago at a TV program, and I was sure we were in for what we needed. And I hope this is a challenge to all of my students of finance, both online and physical, because you remember we said we would like to do research that speaks to issues in our environment, research that speaks to industry, not performances that we have been writing about. So these resources have been committed to you, students, so that you can find meaning in how you can connect the classwork to industry. He has provided a couple of issues which I hope you've taken note of, but we also have a rapporteur who will be sharing some of the highlights in case you have missed something. So at the next submissions for research and proposal presentations, Dr. Oltay and the Higher Education's committee for the faculty and the Nkumba team, we hope we can see different I submit. Thank you so much. Over to you, Professor. Professor is coming on. Then we will do the advice on next.
Thank you, sir. I'm supposed to be here.
Yes.
Perspective. I love reading. Thank you very much, Dr. Faith Ahabiona, for the wonderful coordination. And thank you, Mr. Julius Kapwepwe. I hope I pronounced it correct. Yeah, Mr. Julius Kapwepwe actually is an old friend. Him and I go back very many years, but I will not get into the details of that. Thank you very much for coming and for actually addressing all these issues, this wide range of issues, and interrogating them quite effectively. I have a presentation, but I'm not going to stick with it. I hope you can put it up. I think I was actually nodding all the way through as Mr. Julius was presenting, and I wanted to begin by dealing with the issue of the ideology or economic system, because I think it all goes back to the kind of philosophy that is reigning, the kind of mindset we have, and the kind of policy that emanates from all that. Okay? And he mentioned the ideological foundation of our economic system, which is really neoliberalism, or what he referred to as the Washington Consensus. The Washington Consensus is a market-friendly ideology that is actually holding sway right now across many countries in the world. The IMF and the World Bank have been instrumental in pushing economic reforms in developing countries. I think in the 80s and 90s, we've had the IMF and the World Bank at our doorsteps, preaching to us many things regarding the market, and especially things they call stabilization, liberalization, and privatization. So I have no doubt about the effectiveness of the market system. I have no doubt at all, when it is functional. But markets can also be dysfunctional. So we have to be very, very, very careful how we embrace the market-based system. And so, as he said, the preaching has been to liberalize, to open our economies fully. And the World Bank IMF have been saying that will engender faster growth. Countries that have been inward-looking and protectionist have, according to them, they have failed to grow faster. Now, the reality is more complex than that. There's been a big debate which has raged for nearly 3 to 4 decades right from the time when the so-called East Asian tiger economies performed their miracle of moving from low income to high income, especially countries like Singapore. Mr. Matthew mentioned Singapore here. Lee and Hugh took their countries from low income to high income within a space of 4 decades. Now, was it free market economics alone that did that? I think Mr. Julius eloquently disagreed with that simplistic viewpoint. He actually went ahead, and I agree with him that there is a role for the state. I saw in his paper that there is a need for what we call the active developmental state. The active developmental state. Now, free market, as is taught along the lines of the Washington Consensus, actually is like a blind faith in the market. Okay, the market will do it. Just get out. They have told governments to get out. They have no business being in business. Okay, so they need to get out and allow the market system to work. Stop regulating. Okay, so there were all these terminologies, deregulation and so on, which were floated around. Now, this is like putting your trust in what Adam Smith called the invisible hand. What is the invisible hand? The invisible hand is the market forces. Okay? The forces of the market. It's driven by people. They are something that people are rational and self-interested. So the pursuit of rational self-interest would result in an optimal allocation of resources, and thereby the market will perform very well. This is the argument that at least from the 80s we have heard and we have seen, and the IMF, the World Bank have been, plus also the other industrial countries, the Western democratic capitalist economies, have been preaching this to us. And actually, as we speak, Uganda claims, I wanted to move back ahead. Uganda professes to be a free enterprise, private sector-led, export-oriented, and foreign investment-friendly market economy. I think you have heard some of these terms over and over. In the radio, the politicians, they speak of this. Right? Private sector-led. So it is the private sector that is the engine of economic growth. And I think that agrees with what Matthew was talking about, entrepreneurship. Okay? Let the private sector innovate businesses, entrepreneurship. So, but of course the true story is much bigger than that. Yes. It's much complex, it's a multiplicity of things that we need. So, I've already mentioned that this arises from the Washington Consensus, which is really free market ideology. You can move on. I think Mr. Julius addressed a lot of these issues of Uganda being in the global economy, a member of the WTO, and also economic groupings, such as the EAC. We are very much in the EAC. We are founder members. COMESA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and so forth. Okay. So, but there is one clear philosophy tying all this. It's an open and competitive market system. Now, I have very great respect for the market, because when there is competition, usually quality, innovation, and lower prices for consumers actually tends to prevail. When there is competition, it's good for the consumer. I think you are aware of that. Competition also imposes the need for innovation. Okay? And competition also forces companies to actually, I think that the one case was the price war between MTN and Warid or Airtel. the other time, when coal tariffs were really very high. But as a result of that competition, coal tariffs actually came down. So competition is good for the consumer. And that is an aspect of the market. Now, but it is a blind force. The market is a blind force. That's why I agree with Mr. Julius regarding the need for what we call active developmental state. That means the state will, even as it allows the market to function, will be sort of guiding certain aspects of the market. I don't think that the blind forces of the invisible hand can align the process, the transformation in line with our development priorities, as you might maybe see in the NDP 1, 2, 3. Can Adam Smith's invisible hand guide the country through all that? Is the question I leave with you. Okay. Now, so all this effort of opening the markets and letting the private sector do what it can do best and so forth is aimed at now our current near objective is to become middle income status, to become middle income economies. So I have not talked about FDI, but what I would say is that, as my colleague said, it's not automatic that we are beneficiary of foreign direct investment. There are many things required for us to benefit from FDI as a host nation. Okay? One of them is actually ensuring that FDI, so he eloquently said this, FDI is constrained to use local resources, is constrained to employ local labor, is employed to transfer know-how, technology, and management skills, is also contributes to tax revenue. Now we are actually sacrificing that aspect, tax revenue, by giving tax holidays. Now the question I want to leave with you: are tax holidays really necessary for attracting inward investment? There are many papers, academic papers, which actually dispute the necessity of granting all these generous tax holidays to bring in investors. I think I will conclude by saying that the dynamics in the real world are quite complex and need set of policy that is cognizant of the fact that the invisible hand is blind. So there are certain things we need to regulate. So it's a complex mix, and with that, I will conclude my statement by saying that we need to do a lot more in terms of questioning and interrogating these policies and what we should really be doing. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Ijo, for that wonderful presentation. I would like to remind members that they should be noting down the concerns and questions as we prepare to question and interact with our presenters. At this point, I think we are supposed to be having lunch, and we are going to move. Is it the same room? Yes, please.
Thank you, Viva. So it is exactly 13 past 1, and our next session starts at 10 minutes to 2. 10 minutes to 2. So remember my story in the morning, right? For the people who are not here, I can repeat it, that researchers We are magicians. You can also call us spiritualists. People who read the mind, people who foretell, and people who make the world, many things happen in the world. And we can only do that by unearthing what the world doesn't know. And that's what we do in research. You tell the world what they do not know, and you cause them to believe. Or sometimes they know, but they've not taken time to discover. So we discover and we convince them to believe, right? So this afternoon we are going to convince ourselves to believe that we can do lunch in less than 30 minutes, right? And we are going to make the world believe, and we will do it, isn't it? So at exactly 10 minutes to 2, we will begin. The panelists are all in the house. The panelists are already in the house. So members, you can feel free to stick around or go catch something small, but we will begin at 10 minutes to 2. So thank you. Let's not miss the next session. Is the one that is even more interesting than the morning one. So let's quickly catch something small and come here or stay behind. Yeah. So let's move and let's be fast. So members online, you have only 30 minutes to rest. Please be back at 10 minutes to 2. We'll be starting. Thank you.
As we do that, let's clap for her. Okay. For those who came in late, please, we have a link, and we're interested in you to share that link, especially in your status. If you know you're benefiting, don't limit yourself. Make sure you can. So, how many of you have the link, the online link? Because you might be making assumptions, wrong assumptions. If you have an online link, or if you got an online link, hey. Oh, only about 5 people. I don't know what we'll do, who has the contacts. Anyway, we shall find out what to do, but we are going to share that link. But if you don't have the link, on your mobile phone, just go to your YouTube app or your application for YouTube, and then search for Tanya Innovations Africa. I'm sure you're going to find that even. Maybe that's even a better way. Just go onto your phone now on YouTube, search for Tanya Innovations Africa, and kindly share. I'm sure you'll be able to get the share button and be able to share it on your status for purpose of maybe people who are in your group. If there are groups that you love to follow up, then you can just be able to share the same link to other platforms. And for you as an individual, please make sure you subscribe. So many times we come in a workshop, we are about 70 people, but when you tell people subscribe, you get out, there are only 2 or 3. But I hope that we are all educated and we know that this is important. The reason why I'm emphasizing, business-wise, it's important and it makes that sense. So go on to that platform. Mr. Kapu, kindly, we shall be privileged as Tanya Innovations to find Mr. Kapwepwe subscribing to Tanya Innovations and sharing to his friends. That will make some sense to us, and it's why we are asking you at this very point. For lunch, we have coupons that are going to be given out to you. Those who did not share breakfast with us, it's the next room down, so you will get there with a coupon. So please go there with a coupon. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable when they ask you for a coupon and you're online. You know what I mean? So make sure we have Mr. Alfred, who is going to share with you a coupon which you shall use to access our lunch. Otherwise, thank you so much.